Welcome to Playing Above the Line, where we interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and community activists to get their thoughts and perspectives on leadership. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group, a business consulting and accounting firm focused on preparing clients for the future through innovation and positive growth. Welcome to Playing Above the Line. I'm Alan, your host, and we are coming to you again from Hatch in downtown Fairhope. We appreciate Rick Miller always being so courteous and opening up this space to us. A little thing called COVID came along, then we had a hurricane down here on the Gulf Coast of Alabama that kind of threw us behind as well. So I know I sound like a broken record, but I promise one day I will say that we're coming to you from our new studio. So hope that'll be sooner rather than later. Our guest today is Lee Lawson, and he is the president and CEO of Baldwin County Economic Alliance. And Lee, thanks for coming.
No, thanks for having me.
Now, look, I'll be quite transparent with you. Anytime I think of someone who works in economic development, I mean, that just seems like one of those esoteric kind of pie in the sky things. You know, I'm an accountant, a CPA, so I like the tangible numbers. I mean, very black and white and that kind of thing. So anytime I meet someone who works in economic development, I'm thinking, what exactly is that? And I know that the ultimate goal is to bring industry to Baldwin County and the surrounding areas and that kind of thing. But I mean, what does that look like for you on a daily basis?
Well, I mean, first of all, you're not wrong. Economic development is this term of for a lot of people endearment, but a lot of people still don't know what it means.
Right,
they know it means it's positive and it's good for our community or where we live. But I think even my wife of 15 years can tell you that she still doesn't know exactly what I do.
Right.
But it's a lot of pieces of, especially when you're in our position representing a specific geography in Baldwin County. I would say it's a master of a lot of things, and it's one part marketing and sales, business development, and then it's one part understanding what business and industry's needs are and how to prepare the community for those needs.
Right.
And then it's being ready for your opportunity, and then making sure that all the things from workforce development to business engagement with your existing business and industry, because they're your number one advocate and customer, and then everything from education to infrastructure to utilities to all the things that business needs to locate in a new place are there. Yeah. And a lot of that's this chicken and egg mentality of you got to do all this preparation, all this front end work, and then when the opportunity hits, you hit it, and then you have that success. And I tell a lot of people the hardest part about being an economic developer is you don't get to celebrate second. Because you come in, you do all this work, you do all this preparation, you compete for these opportunities, and then a lot of times you finish so close. Yeah. But you know the great thing about our community and the group of partners, and the reason the name of our organization is Alliance is because we truly are an alliance of 5 chambers of commerce in Baldwin County, 8 industrial development boards, 3 airport authorities, 13 municipalities, and then the county government itself, and then 100 private businesses support our endeavors. So, I mean, it truly is an alliance of the entire county. And in this county, which we all know because we live here and work here, but it's a big geographic place that is very diverse geographically, but also economically.
No doubt, and I've got to think that with everything that you just said, I mean, patience is a virtue, right? I mean, so economic development is not something that you do something today and you get immediately rewarded tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a microwave; it's a crock pot for sure. Yeah. I mean, and so if you're short on patience, our business is not for you, and it's a lot of sowing seeds that some bloom quickly and you reap, but a lot of it's just planting seeds along the way that eventually grow. And it's funny in my career in this business how I've looked back at endeavors or initiatives that were started once, and time and energy and resources have been put into, and then all of a sudden when it pays off, you go, you know what, that 2 years or that 3 years or that 5 years was worth it because it finally paid off, and it showed the economic impact and what we told people. And a lot of times you got to be almost somewhat prophetic in this business is to say, hey, I'm looking beyond where anybody else is looking in the community to say, we need this. And you're asking people to spend time, money, and energy to develop something that sometimes doesn't pay off for years. Yeah. But when it does, it hits big, and then that's when everybody gets to wrap arms around each other and say, hey, we're the smartest people in the world, right?
No doubt, no doubt. Well, so let's back up. You graduated from Troy with a degree in broadcast journalism and public relations, but I think judging from your bio, it looks like you've always kind of worked in the economic development realm. So how did you get from public relations and broadcast journalism to being an economic developer?
It's a very interesting story. I was a senior at Troy. I played basketball my freshman year at Troy and really thought I wanted to do sports. I wanted to be involved in sports broadcasting in some way, shape, or form, and went through that process and enjoyed PR and all the diversity and took a lot of leadership classes. Troy offered a minor in leadership, and just really towards the end of my time there at Troy, I had a broadcaster in Montgomery, longtime broadcaster named Bob Howell, who did the news in Montgomery, and he taught adjunctly at Troy, and he taught this class, and one of the first few weeks of class, he said, all right, today's life lesson day, put the books up, and he went out on the board, and he said, all of you are from the South, more than likely. He said, and most of you are from Central to South Alabama, so you all have a Southern dialect. So you're all going to be remanded to these media markets. And he was up on a whiteboard basically circling the southern half of the country. And he said, and the starting salary in broadcast journalism is $24,000 at that point. And then he said, do any of you know how much an apartment costs? And he did rent. And then he did, you're all going to be probably not smart, and you're going to go get a brand new car when you graduate college because some car dealers are going to give you credit. We weren't to groceries before we were broke. And I said, this could have been a great freshman class. Right, why is this happening my senior year? But in all actuality, I loved broadcast. I loved going out, shooting the story, writing it, and then producing. We had a student-run TV station at Troy, so we actually got to write the news, produce it, shoot it, and then we were on the news as students. And so Trojan TV was a great experience for me, but I interned, I had to intern for my major. And so I had a great friend that I worked for on campus that got me an introduction to the head of the State Chamber of Commerce Association in Alabama, a guy by the name of Ralph Stacy, who ended up becoming a mentor of mine. And I went to Montgomery and asked Ralph for an internship, and he was on the phone the entire time we were supposed to be interviewing for this internship because his mother was having issues at her retirement home. And he finally said, I'm so sorry, I've been on the phone. What are you doing for lunch? And I had class back in Troy. And I said, oh, nothing. He said, well, come with me. So we went to the Montgomery Country Club for an association executives luncheon. Okay. And he sat me at a table full of association executives and watched me. He watched me eat lunch and interact with these adults. Here I was, a college rising junior, senior. And after that, he said, I can't pay you anything. I can give you a little bit of money for gas, but you did pretty well in there. I think you'd be a pretty good intern. I was like, well, great. I need this for my major to complete my degree. So I split time that summer interning for the Chamber of Commerce Association and then the Business Council of Alabama, which is the state's largest business lobby. And that summer happened to be the summer of the Amendment 1 tax campaign that Governor Riley did early in his first administration. And I worked a lot on that campaign, worked a lot across the state with different chambers and economic development organizations and businesses at the BCA. And so it was just a real flashpoint for me, really being insulated in college, not really knowing how the outside business world worked. And, I'd work jobs during the summer, but nothing really towards a career. And really the time came for me to graduate, and they didn't have a job for me. I thought I wanted to be a lobbyist, wanted a job at the Business Council, and it wasn't there. But they got me an interview up in Madison, Alabama, at the Madison Chamber of Commerce on a startup economic development position that was contracted by the city of Madison to do retail recruitment and development for the city of Madison. And I was literally on I-65 headed north. I had submitted tapes to, at that time, ESPN was doing this all call for a reality show they were doing. I don't know if you remember this, but basically you could send in tapes and you could come try out in certain areas around the country to be the next SportsCenter anchor. They did this kind of a...
I missed that somehow.
It was kind of like... what's the singing show?
American Idol?
Yeah, like American Idol, but for SportsCenter.
Okay.
And so they did it like once or twice. They only did it a couple times, but I had signed up and had a slot for an interview in Nashville. Well, it was the same day as my interview at the Madison Chamber of Commerce. And I was like, bird in the hand or, I literally was going up there not knowing if I was going to continue to go north on 65 or take a right on 565, and I did, and interviewed in Madison. got the job, and the rest is history. I've been in economic development ever since. So
wow, that's a great story.
I could have been either Reese Davis or now Lee Lawson, the economic developer. So.
Well, obviously a great choice on your part, because I mean
Right.
you've had a great career in economic development so far for sure. So let's stay on Ralph Stacey just for a second, and we're going to circle back to leadership because this is a leadership podcast, and we'll get there, I promise. But you mentioned him as a mentor. So what's the importance in your mind of having a mentor, and then what did you learn from Ralph? What did he impart to you that you still draw from today?
Oh my God! I mean, just so much, and to know Ralph was to really love him. Just big personality. He was a big guy, but just big personality. Filled up every room he was ever in, but just taught me so much. He was a guy that he grew up poor in Greenville. Just had an amazing story about where he came from. He pulled himself up by his bootstraps. Worked ended up volunteering at the chamber, working for the chamber, running the chamber in Greenville, and then just kind of launched into this state association mode and ran the Chamber of Commerce Association, and then formed that partnership with the Business Council, which has helped make the State Chamber Association what it is today. And he had so many great, a lot of people call them life hacks, but I mean, it was just this way of approaching being a professional and yet not taking yourself too seriously too. So I mean, it was all those things in between. But I'll never forget, he saw, back to that story about me having lunch with him that day, he saw me and he pulled me off to the side, and when everybody's looking, and because it was this round table, and I'll never forget, he said, you know how you determine where your bread plate and your drink is, and he said, make a B and D with both hands, and he said, that's how you always know. And I'll never, I teach my kids that to this day. I mean, I was like, hey, you sit at a round table, a fancy place, that's how you know. And I was pretty simple kid myself growing up in Montgomery, but he just took me under his wing, and I was an intern, but he treated me like a colleague. And even then, after I left him, it was almost like he was always a boss and a friend, someone I could always call on no matter the circumstance. If it was something within the job, or if it was something within in my life, or the next professional decision that was on my plate, whether it was a job opportunity or something going on with the job, he was somebody I could always reach out to. And his advice was always pretty sound. It was never, let me tell you what to do in this situation. It was always, well, what do you think, and let's talk through it.
Yeah. I would submit that everyone needs that person in their life. Not everyone is as lucky as you, obviously, with Ralph, to have that person. But, if you can find somebody out there like that, it's worth having that influence in your life for sure. I
mean, I agree with you. I think everybody should have someone that they can reach out to in business, but too in life. I mean, I think we all need that. I mean, I have that on the personal side of my life and circle of friends and people that I look up to. But I think too in business, there's so many opportunities for us to have decisions to make, or to have real critical things in front of us that we need to be able to take a step back to and talk to someone who sometimes is removed from the situation and go, hey, what do you think here? How would you do this if you were in my shoes?
Yep. Agreed. Good stuff. All right, leadership. So when I say the word leader or leadership, and what does that invoke? What do you think of when I say those words?
For me, a lot of times being an athletic background, you see a leader as the coach of the team or the quarterback, and someone who's the vocal leader out there out front. And sometimes I think that's true, but really what leadership invokes to me is someone that instills the confidence of those around them, and it's not so much of a dominating coach style leader, but someone that you can see the team around them that they are leading, the folks that they're leading around them, and you can see the confidence in their leader in them.
Mm-hmm. That's good. And one of the things that you mentioned, and I don't know that this particular term has come up before, but in asking what are some characteristics of a good leader, you mentioned role identification, which I think is interesting. So expand on that, and what exactly do you mean by role identification?
Well, I just think, a lot of times if we step back and we look at the organization we're in, like for me, I'm in a real small organization that has a staff of 5 and then some offshoots that we lead, like Hatch and the foundation that we lead kind of tangentially or at an arm's length. And a lot of times you got to understand what the role is. And I think whether you're in a big company and really whether you're in a position of leadership at the top or leadership at the mid-level or even at the bottom level, everybody's given responsibilities to lead in a certain way. And I think understanding that role is critical because at the end of the day, you're leading a team. Right. And each of those team members have to believe in the leader at the top, of course. But they also have to understand that, hey, that leader's not going to get in my role. And I think part of that is I've worked for many different leaders and seen their styles, and I've seen everything from a very hands-off leadership and empowering those beneath them to really micromanaging. And I think looking at that wide spectrum of leadership, it's kind of informed to my role and how I lead the people that I'm in charge of leading on a daily basis too, to say, all right, what is my role? And then in economic development, we walk into so many different rooms that require us to take a different role. Mm-hmm. So part of my profession has pushed me in that direction too, in the fact that I'm not always the quarterback. I'd love to be the quarterback. Part of my style and my Enneagram number would tell me that I'm a quarterback because I'm a 3. Yeah. But, at the end of the day, you got to look at the room too and go, all right, should the mayor be the quarterback? Yeah. Is the governor the quarterback because they're leading the project and it's a big deal? And Secretary of Commerce, do I defer to him? And so, you really have to understand that role. And I think that's what makes great leaders is understanding, hey, I may be a leader, but my role is going to change depending on the scenarios that I'm in.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And it comes down to team synergy. When you're looking at your team and trying to put together a team, you want to try to put folks in a position to be successful, empower them, as you mentioned, to be successful. And that comes down to knowing their strengths, knowing their weaknesses, and then being willing to let them run with those strengths.
I mean, absolutely.
So I kind of lean toward the autonomy, giving them the freedom to do what they need to do and do their job. Micromanagers have really kind of always rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, just because it seems like it can come across as not trusting. And so I think team synergy in that role identification is huge.
Yeah, and especially small organizations like ours, you can't afford that. I had a boss early on, worked for a development group out of Birmingham, and we developed industrial parks for an authority of the county, and it was a team of 3 of us. Mm-hmm. And we had several thousand acres and 3 different tracts of land in different parts of the county that we managed and developed. And my boss, to her credit, just threw me into the fire and let me fail sometimes too. And sure. I think looking back on it, I think some of it was purposefully. I think she truly threw me into some situations she knew that was going to be over my head because it was good for me to fail as a leader. And I've hired a lot of younger people right out of college or grad school, and I've tried to do the same thing. And part of you as someone who's success driven, you want to hold those reins back sometimes, and you want to say, no, I don't need to put them in that situation. Put your hand in front of them and you step forward while you push them back. But a lot of times you have to kind of put that hand on their back and push them forward while you step back and go, you know what, this may end badly, but it will be better for them and for us as a team. No doubt. And look, failure is not a bad word. I think that our culture today thinks that if someone fails, it's a negative thing. That's but the only time it's negative is if you don't learn anything from it, right? That's right. I found myself doing that with my children. You raise your children to be successful, and you want to protect them, and it's hard to let them make mistakes, right? And so I've had to work on that. Now that's one of my things I've had to work on the most is just allowing them to make decisions that I don't agree with necessarily, that may end badly, like you said, and sometimes they do. But then help them learn from what they've done. I agree. I think there's a lot of corollaries between being a parent and being a leader in the workplace, and no doubt. And the decisions you have to make, and the ability to step back and be hands off and watch those around you make the decision they're going to make. And I think in parenting, it's more a life application, but in business, it's more, all right, I'm watching my teammate and my colleague and my employee, watching them make the decision, and you have to sit back and let it go their way, because it's not how you're necessarily going to do it. But a lot of times it ends up being something that's fabulously successful, and you go, I would have never thought it to be done that way. Yeah. So you've got great thoughts on leadership, but let me ask you this. So if you took leadership courses in college and that kind of thing, I'm sure you have an opinion, and in dealing with leaders throughout your career, is a good leader born, or are they made? Is it a combination? Where do you land on that? I think there's certain personality traits and things within us that we tend to err on. I'm a believer in you are who you are. So, I'm a believer in some of these, I don't take them as the gospel. Some of these, I mentioned the Enneagram and some of these personality tests and all that. I think that helps identify strengths and weaknesses in an individual's characteristics. I think that they're stronger and weaker in. But I would say a lot of leaders are made. I mean, I think it's a hybrid. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you got to want to lead. It's not this involuntary thing.
Right.
I think all leaders are given the opportunity to then step into that gap at some point in their time and in their careers of those opportunities. I mean, you look at the major successful CEOs out there that a lot of people see as business icons. You go back into their 20s and early 30s, a lot of them would say there was probably some pivotal moments or a pivotal move at a certain company that put them in a position to be the leader they are now. So, I mean, I think that's part of the made piece of it.
Right.
And I like to listen to the podcast "How I Built This." I don't know if you've listened to that.
I mentioned a time or two on the
yeah.
podcast,
So I mean, like I think that's a great podcast. And the one question they always ask on the podcast is, was it luck or was it skill? Basically how you made it. And all of them have this flashpoint of going, no, we were on the brink of failure, or
right.
Wow, we got so lucky because we fell in backwards into this certain opportunity. I think there's a lot of, that's a great question, but the long and short of it is I think it's a hybrid of, Nick Saban is Nick Saban, right? And that he's won as much because he's got the characteristics and the leadership qualities that he's instilled not only in himself but those around him. And there's a reason that for every Nick Saban there's 1,000 people that don't make it or aren't as successful.
You made a great point. Even if you subscribe to the theory that someone can be born with every single intangible and characteristic and quality that you need to be the greatest leader in the world, if that person doesn't choose to lead, then it's not going to happen, right?
Not to keep going back to sports, there's names out there that are some of the best, most heralded up-and-coming basketball players ever that we've never heard of. Yeah. Because at some point in time, their talent never matured into them being able to make it to the next step. Yeah. And I think the same is true in leadership. There's a lot of people out there that have the qualities and the ability to lead. It's just, are they put in positions to refine that?
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. Well, you mentioned Nick Saban, and when we asked you to give us a leader or two that you admire, Nick Saban was on the list. Phil Knight, Jeff Bezos, or Bezos, I guess, and Mark Cuban. So what about those guys?
All of them have a very strong personality.
Yeah.
And I think those are the type of leaders that I'm drawn to, of folks that are confident in their leadership style and in their ability to develop success and around them. And all of those, I think every single one of those will tell you there was this point in their time where they were working their tails off to get to where they are now. They all were hard workers. They all really kind of came up from not a whole lot,
right,
and have made just successful organizations, iconic brands that will span generations. And then just some are just seen as just natural born winners. Yeah. Being a former athlete, I'm just drawn to that. And as an athlete, you want to play with winners. You want to play with those that are better than you, that can propel you and push you to win. And I take things from each of those guys and a lot of others. I mean, I think there's people that I see on a local, regional, state level that are successful business people that I've looked at and gone, man, you know what, that's a leader.
Yeah, so no doubt. Obviously, on the sports side of things, success is winning, right? I mean, it's pretty easy to define success. So as you look at your role with the Baldwin County Economic Alliance, what do you define as success? At the end of the day, when you go home and you think, okay, I've had a successful day, or at the end of your tenure, you look back and you say, okay, my tenure here has been a success. How do you define success in your role?
I think that's the beauty about being a local economic developer. You get to live in the community that you're charged with prospering. And I think just the very high-level litmus test of whether I've had a successful day or a successful year is, do I still want to live in this community?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Am I so ecstatic that myself and my family are here? And that answer for me for the last 7 years has been absolutely. And that answer has been yes, because I don't want to look or go anywhere else either. I mean, it's the longest place I've been in my career. And there's a lot of great things happening in this community, but I would say, too, it's also the companies that I get to work with and the companies that I get to locate here that are totally new to this area. And it's being in the grocery store and seeing an insignia or a badge on somebody and they're working at a place that you helped put in your community. And that's really where the rubber meets the road, and you get to kind of smile and tangibly see the things you're working on and go, you know what, that person's getting a paycheck at this place because this company that started with one phone call or one email, and it materialized to them, investing millions of dollars in your community through not only what they're building, but the people they're employing, and you're shoulder to shoulder with them in the supermarket line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think that's a quick litmus test. Overall, looking back, I want to see the best for Baldwin County. I want to see all types of jobs being created here. I want my kids to be able to have a career opportunity here if they want to come back here, right. Whether it's when they graduate high school or community college or 4-year school. Whatever they decide to do, I want to be able to, and I hear that so many times, I want to give my kids the opportunity to live where I get to live if they want to.
Right.
And so I think that's a great test too of economic development, and are you growing your community the right way, and are the types of jobs you're creating bettering people's lives.
Man, that's good stuff. Gosh, we've been talking for almost 30 minutes, so we got to wrap up, and I hate that. But let me ask you a couple of questions first. So you mentioned the one podcast. Anything else that you can point our listeners to as far as a book or author or another podcast that's had an impact on you that you enjoy? It doesn't necessarily have to be business or leadership related, just something out there that you kind of go back to time and again?
Yeah, business related. I read a book recently called Extreme Ownership, and it's by two former Navy SEALs that were Navy SEAL instructors. Just some great examples of really owning it. And they now become consultants with business. And so they're out in the Fortune 500 world consulting. And so they use a lot of examples of how they've gone into C-suite offices, and the C-suite guy's not owning it. They're saying, hey, come in and help us fix this part of our business. And it's always risen to the top where somebody along the line isn't owning up to failure or a failure to communicate or something like that. And then they translate it. It's a real world business example, and then they show an example of them as SEALs when this happened as a SEAL.
Okay.
It's a really cool book. Other things. I do like the How I Built This, just because we deal with a lot of businesses and business leaders, and sometimes we deal with folks that started the company, developed it, and own it. And so a lot of times that's, you have to understand that mind of the entrepreneur. And I think that's what drove us to develop Hatch here where we're at now, Tech Entrepreneurial Development Center. Always been a dream of mine when I came back here to have a physical location where entrepreneurs could come and grow their business or their idea. And How I Built This is real cool. You get to hear all the brands that you consume and the people behind them, and how at one point in time the guy behind Cliff Bar almost sold it to one of the major food companies, and he literally was going up to the lawyer's office to close, and he was going to make $25 million. And he literally walked into the conference room, walked out, got on the elevator, and walked out of the closing without signing because he said, I had this feeling it wasn't right. Oh, wow. Now it's like worth
more than 25
million. Hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's just great hearing those stories, small companies, big companies. I read Shoe Dog, Phil Knight's memoir, the brand that I grew up wearing and idolizing, just hearing how, they almost failed because of some bad rubber out of Asia. Just all the things that make great companies great, and how they all teetered on the brink.
Yeah, those are all great. Thanks for that. And I would encourage folks to go out there and check all those out, because that's all very intriguing stuff. We're going to play a little this or that in just a second, but I do have one more question since you're a sports guy. Mm-hmm. Give me a bucket list destination or stadium or sporting event to attend.
That I haven't done?
Have not done, yeah.
And I've been very fortunate.
Yeah.
I've checked some buckets off that I have not done.
Or if you've done them all, then give me your favorite one so far.
I haven't done all of them. I'm a huge basketball fan, and I grew up a Duke fan. My stepbrother went to Duke when he was 16, and it was during the Leighton Hurley years. He's older than me, and he covered the team for the school paper. So we were really just diehard Duke Blue Devil fans. I've been to Cameron Indoor Stadium, not while a game is being played. Okay, I was there for a conference, and they had set up where we got to go for a closed, moderated practice where Coach K wore a mic. And cool. It was business leaders, and so he was coaching the practice. It was preseason, and then he would turn to us and talk about philosophies and this and that, and he intertwined some business ideas. So that was a really cool event, but I've never been for a game. And so And the crazy thing was I was on business out on the West Coast, and Duke ended up playing Troy in the first round of the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago, and I could not get back in time to go to that game. It was in North Carolina, and it just killed me. Yeah, my alma mater playing, the school I grew up just idolizing.
No doubt.
And, of course, they killed Troy. But I would love to go to Cameron Indoor Stadium for the Duke UNC game. I mean, that's bucket list.
That's great. And I imagine that's a tough ticket, but that would be that would be a lot of fun for sure. Okay, all right, good stuff. We're going to close with a little this or that. So run through these real quick and see what we find out.
All
right. Cookies or cake?
Cookies.
Cat or dog?
Dog.
Pop or rock? Music.
That's tough. I'm a kind of, I guess, pop. I'll go pop.
All right. Pancakes or waffles?
Pancakes.
Early bird or night owl?
Sorry. Night owl.
All right. Text or phone call?
I'm a phone call.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, I can't. Too much texting. Summer or winter?
Do we even have winter here?
Relative winter, I guess.
Summer.
All right. Book or a movie?
A movie.
Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
Comedy or horror?
Comedy.
Hamburger or hot dog?
Hamburger.
Reading or writing?
Man. I would go reading.
All right. Superman or Batman?
Superman all day.
Facebook or Twitter?
Twitter.
Burgers or tacos?
Oh, if they're dragonfly tacos.
I hear you. I like that. Ketchup or mustard?
Mustard.
All right. And last one, I think I know the answer. Watch or play sports?
Oh, play all day.
There you go. All right. Lee Lawson, thanks. This has been great. If you want to check out Lee and what he does, you can go to the website, baldwineda.com. We'll also link other websites that he's associated with and his personal media in the show notes. So, Lee, thanks a lot. This has been great.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. It definitely helps us in the ratings, and it also makes it easier for other folks to find the podcast. And as always, a big thank you to producer and editor Carrie Wolf. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group. If you want to know more about who we are and what we do, you can visit our website at avisogroup.com. That's AVIZO group.com. You can also check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.